ਸਵਾਗਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਜੀ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਇਸ ਸੈਗਮੈਂਟ ਵਿੱਚ। ਅੱਜ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਮੁਲਾਕਾਤ ਮੈਂ ਡੇਵਿਡ ਡੈਲੀ ਜੀ ਹੁਣਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਕਰਾਉਣੀ ਆ। ਇਹ ਪਿਛਲੇ ਕੁਝ ਸਮੇਂ ਤੋਂ ਇਹੋ ਜਿਹੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਆਯੋਜਿਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਨੇ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬਹੁ ਭਿੰਨਤਾ ਦੀ ਤੇ ਵੱਖ-ਵੱਖ ਧਰਮਾਂ ਦੀ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਮਿਲਦੀ ਆ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦਾ ਮੁੱਖ ਮਕਸਦ ਇਹੀ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਆ ਕਿ ਆਪਣੀ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਹੋਵੇ ਵੱਖ-ਵੱਖ ਧਰਮਾਂ ਬਾਰੇ, ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਗਲਤ ਧਾਰਨਾਵਾਂ ਬਣੀਆਂ ਹੁੰਦੀਆਂ ਦੂਜਿਆਂ ਪ੍ਰਤੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਦੂਰ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾਵੇ ਤੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀਜ਼ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪਿਆਰ ਤੇ ਸਤਿਕਾਰ ਬਣਿਆ ਰਵੇ, ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਆਪਣੇ ਇੱਕ ਅਮਨ ਸ਼ਾਂਤੀ ਆਪਣੀ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬਣੀ ਰਵੇ। ਤਾਂ ਆਓ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਡੇਵਿਡ ਡੈਲੀ ਜੀ ਹੁਣਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਤੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਪ੍ਰਾਪਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਆਉਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਸਮੇਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿਹੋ ਜਿਹੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਇਹ ਤਿਆਰ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ। Welcome to the program, David.
It's good to be here.
Well, David, can you tell me a little bit about your background and what you've been up to lately?
Sure. Well, I've been really involved in interfaith work for the last probably 6 or 7 years. And what interfaith is it's the coming together of people from different religious, spiritual, or philosophical backgrounds to learn about one another, to build awareness, to build trust and respect, but also to deepen their own understanding of their own traditions and convictions as well.
Oh, okay. So now and why do you want to do this work? Like, why do we want to do interfaith work?
Well, going back maybe even 7 years ago, it started for me. I have young children. They're 7 and 9 right now, but when they were younger, and my wife and I were looking. We wanted to raise them to be global citizens and to be aware of the diversity in our community and in the world around us, and wanted to expose them to the diversity in Surrey. But what we found was that it was really difficult to expose them to that element of diversity, religious diversity. Right. It's easy to learn about the different ways that we eat, the different ways that we dress, those sort of superficial things, but it was a little harder to learn about the other deeper elements of belief and religious practice and things like that. Even though as you drive around Surrey, there's a masjid on one corner, there's a gurdwara on another corner, a church here, so it's a very important part of our community, and I felt as a parent that this was something I needed to educate my children about, and that's what started it off, and I think it's important that we get to know each other at that level as well.
So were you not afraid that the kids might be influenced by the other faiths and want to convert?
This is a wonderful question, and it's one of those misconceptions about interfaith, that by learning about another faith or visiting another house of worship, that it may somehow dilute our own convictions, and we find that the exact opposite happens. And especially when we're talking about children, and this is we had a lot of conversation about this, and because some of our early programming, we actually did tours with very young children to different houses of worship, and the children learned about different religious and spiritual traditions. What the parents found, and we had families from all different traditions participating. What the parents found was that by visiting other houses of worship, their children actually learned more about their own tradition and became grounded in their own religious and spiritual tradition. So let me give you an example. A Christian family who was participating in the program took their children on one of the visits. We visited a Sikh Gurdwara, where the worship, the practice is very different from what happens in a church, a Christian church. But in visiting that Gurdwara, it awoke in the children a range of questions that they had never thought to ask their parents. Right. And so they asked their parents, why do they do this? Why do we do that? What did this mean? What does this mean in my church? And so the parents actually had this opportunity to have more sophisticated conversations with their children about their own tradition. And that happened with families from all traditions. So Muslim families, when they visited at the Hindu mandir, they were able to have conversations that deepened the children's understanding of their Muslim faith. So that's very important.
So there's no real threat to doing this work.
Not. And even as adults, it's important that that's a part that we want to get out of it, that when we engage with others and we learn about others, a very important part of that is we're learning how to articulate our own faith.
Right.
And we're learning about what is valuable to us and what is meaningful for us. And so we deepen our own understanding of our own religious and spiritual.
That's really interesting, because I know as a parent myself, I went back and learned more about my faith because, I had children, and all of a sudden I wanted to explain what the faith and the values were that were important. But I could only do that if I knew some of that.
Right.
Right. It wasn't just about going to the Gurdwara and,
Right.
paying my respects and eating the food and coming home. Right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
It challenges us.
It challenges us as a parent.
Yeah. And things that we may have just taken, assumptions or things that we take for granted. When we're put in a place where we have to explain it, it challenges us to go back and learn more about our own traditions.
Yeah. No, so that's really good. So you started off with interfaith work with children, and now you're branching out into more adult working with adults.
Yeah, it's all volunteer driven, and so we really just. As a group, and there's a growing interest for it in Surrey, we really just follow where the interest lies. And for a few years we did some youth programming, and now there's a real need to provide similar opportunities for adults to come together and both have conversation and dialogue, but also to do things like share in music or share in worship even, or meditate together. So we're following the need. So yes, right now we're doing a lot of adult programming.
Well, with all the diversity, from my own belief is that with the diversity in our communities, like unless we start getting to know our neighbors and what they're all about, and really helping reduce those stereotypes that we have of each other, and we all have them, we're not going to be able to have that peaceful, loving community that we all actually want to live in, where there's respect for each other and respect for each other's diversity. Yeah, so I really commend the work that you're doing, and the volunteers that you have as well.
Yes, it is. It's not just me at all. It is absolutely a growing. There's a growing need for it in Surrey, and we're finding that there's growing resources to do this type of work in Surrey.
Well, okay. So, and I know that you've got some programs that you're considering for the near future, and you've done some real successful events. I've attended the one that you had at the library, where you were talking about different faith groups and stories from different faith groups. So, you've done some great work there. Yeah, and the story time kits as well for the libraries as well. That's really good. Yeah. So David, we're just going to take a short break right now, and we'll come back with some more questions about programs that are upcoming. So David जी ने आज साढ़े नाल जानकारी यही दित्ती है कि ਜਿਹੜੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਲਿਖੇ ਸੀਗੇ, ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਤੋਂ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕੀਤਾ ਆ, ਵੇ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਵੱਖ-ਵੱਖ ਧਰਮਾਂ ਸਥਾਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਦੇਣੀ ਦੂਜਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਧਰਮਾਂ ਬਾਰੇ, ਤੇ ਇਹਦੇ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਵਿਸ਼ਵਾਸ ਆ ਕਿ ਜੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਦੂਜੇ ਧਰਮਾਂ ਬਾਰੇ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਆ, ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਉਹ ਵੀ ਉਤਸ਼ਾਹ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਆਪਣੇ ਧਰਮ ਬਾਰੇ ਵੀ ਹੋਰ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਲੈਣ, ਤੇ ਮਾਪਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਆ ਵੀ ਜਦੋਂ ਬੱਚੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਧਰਮ ਬਾਰੇ ਸਵਾਲ ਜਵਾਬ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਆਪਣੇ ਧਰਮ ਬਾਰੇ ਉਹ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਦੇ ਸਕਣ। ਸੋ ਦੂਜਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਧਰਮ ਨੂੰ ਜਾਣਨ ਲਈ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਕੋਈ ਚਿੰਤਤ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਦੂਸਰੇ ਧਰਮ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜ ਜਾਣਗੇ। ਸੋ ਅਸੀਂ ਵਾਪਸ ਆਉਂਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਛੋਟੀ ਜਿਹੀ ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ। ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ ਜੀ ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰੀ ਫਿਰ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ। ਅੱਜ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਡੇਵਿਡ ਡੈਲੀ ਜੀ ਨਾਲ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਜੋ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਵੱਖ-ਵੱਖ ਧਰਮਾਂ ਬਾਰੇ ਉਹ ਲਿਖੇ ਨੇ। So David, what is this we have in front of us today?
Well, this is a model of a teepee, Jas, which is the dwelling of the First Nations people that lived on this land well before European settlement and other immigrants. And so this is what they lived in. It was coated like that, and the structure was sticks. Now this is a very crude model, but I like to bring it when I'm talking about interfaith because it's a really good metaphor. A teepee only stands up if all of the poles are very well grounded, so they're solid on the ground, and secondly that this top piece is very secure, so the pieces are held together and they can support one another and stand up against the wind and the weather. So those are the two ways that a teepee stands up, the ground and then the connection. And also when we do interfaith work, when we come together, these are also the 2 points that we have to keep in mind. We have to be grounded in our own beliefs and our own cultures and identities, But also there's this other important point of connection up here, and that's the point of connection between us, that we do need to share, we do need to lean on each other and support one another, and to be aware of that. And that's what gives us structure as in our plural, diverse society.
Well, that's a very good metaphor. I really love that. So ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਹੀ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਆ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਨਮੂਨਾ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਲਿਆਂਦਾ ਆ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਐਬਰੀਜਨਲ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਆ ਇੱਦਾਂ ਦੇ ਘਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਤੇ ਇਹ ਬਹੁਤ ਵਧੀਆ ਨਮੂਨਾ ਆ ਵੀ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਬਾਰੇ ਸੋ ਇਹ ਜੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਦੂਜੇ ਧਰਮਾਂ ਬਾਰੇ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਰੱਖਣੀ ਆ ਤੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਆ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਧਰਮ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਪਛਾਣੀਏ ਉਹਦੀਆਂ ਕਦਰਾਂ ਕੀਮਤਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪਛਾਣੀਏ ਆਪਣੇ ਸੱਭਿਆਚਾਰ ਨੂੰ ਪਛਾਣੀਏ ਤੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਅਸੀਂ ਰਲ ਮਿਲ ਕੇ ਰਹਿਣਾ ਆ ਤਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਅਸੀਂ ਦੂਜਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਧਰਮਾਂ ਦਾ ਵੀ ਸਤਿਕਾਰ ਕਰੀਏ So very good. I really love how you explained that. So David, I hear you have a very exciting program coming up on March 1st. Maybe we could share that with our viewers?
Yes, on March 1st is the Surrey Spiritual Summit. And the funding for this actually comes from the provincial government because they're very supportive of things like this happening. The Progressive Intercultural Community Services Society.
Yeah, Mr. Gill.
From Mr. Gill. That organization got the funding, and so they are the lead agency for this program. So on March 1st, down at Camp Alexander House, the Surrey Spiritual Summit will be taking place, and that is that will be a gathering of people from different religious backgrounds, spiritual backgrounds, philosophical backgrounds coming together to have some dialogue. There's going to be a few different workshops. One of them will be on music, so people playing music and using that as a means of sharing. One will be on art. There will be some on raising children and how that's done differently in different spiritual communities. One about the environment. So how do our spiritual teachings, our religious teachings, call us to care for creation and the world around us? And a few other workshops as well too.
Now, is this open to the public, or who's going to come to?
Yes, it is. Yeah, it's open to the public. There's no fee, but our space is very limited, so we do need people to register.
Okay.
And lunch is provided. It's a day-long event. Yeah.
Wow, that sounds like fun.
The more diversity we have, the better.
So, is it emphasizing a certain faith, or is it all faiths, or
no, not at all. It's all, anyone can come, and
I mean the workshops themselves. Like, are they geared towards a certain faith groups, or
the different workshops are the facilitators come from their own particular background, but they're not bringing that. It's not about their faith or their spirituality.
So they're not clergy?
No. But they are creating that space. So thinking, for instance, of the person who's doing the workshop on contemplative practice, Rajran Bassi, I think I'm saying that correct, because she's on the board of the World Sikh Organization.
Right.
So that is her role. But when she's facilitating the workshop, she's going to be including and inviting people from different faith communities to share their practices of prayer and contemplation and meditation. So the workshop will be a place of learning about how different communities do contemplation and prayer and meditation. And that's the way the different workshops will look as well. So
you're not really promoting a certain faith group, right? Understanding of a certain faith. So it's all about sharing what's important to them. In the context of, say, raising children, or in the context of their music, or and the environment, and how their faith group sees that. Oh, I see.
So anyone who comes, regardless what tradition they come from, or even if they don't have a tradition, even if they identify as atheist or humanist or non-observant or simply spiritual but not religious.
Okay, well that's great.
Those are people we absolutely want to have there too, because they bring something very important to the conversation as well, and you know, to share what their values are around a particular topic like the environment or
so that's happening March 1st.
March 1st, it's a Saturday.
All-day event?
Yeah, from 9 until 4.
Oh, well, that's great. So I think that's great. I think people should get involved in that and just learn about who their neighbors are, right? So at Camp Alexander House?
Camp Alexander. And I can
in South Surrey?
Yep.
And they can connect with you to get more information.
Yeah, and we can pass on.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you for coming on our show today. We've got lots of great information, and I'm sure the viewers would love to attend some of these workshops and learn more about their neighbors. ਡੇਵਿਡ ਜੀ ਨੇ ਅੱਜ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਹੈ ਮਾਰਚ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਤੇ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵੀ ਸ਼ਾਮਲ ਹੋ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ ਇਹ ਸਾਊਥ ਸਰੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਲੈਗਜ਼ੈਂਡਰ ਹਾਊਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੋਣਾ ਆ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵੱਖ-ਵੱਖ ਸੱਭਿਆਚਾਰ ਤੇ ਧਰਮਾਂ ਬਾਰੇ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਸੰਗੀਤ ਬਾਰੇ, ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ এনवायरमेंट ਬਾਰੇ ਵਿਚਾਰਿਆ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਬਾਰੇ ਸਾਰੇ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਲੈ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵੀ ਆਪਣੇ ਧਰਮ ਬਾਰੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਸਾਂਝੀ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਸੋ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਇੱਦਾਂ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸ਼ਾਮਲ ਹੋਵੋ ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਹੋਵੇ ਵੀ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਆਲੇ ਦੁਆਲੇ ਕੀ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਆ ਤੇ ਕਿਹੋ ਜਿਹੇ ਧਰਮ ਤੇ ਸੱਭਿਆਚਾਰ ਵਾਲੇ ਲੋਕ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ, ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਆਪਣੀਆਂ ਗਲਤ ਫਹਿਮੀਆਂ ਆ ਦੂਜਿਆਂ ਪ੍ਰਤੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਅਸੀਂ ਦੂਰ ਕਰ ਸਕੀਏ ਤੇ ਇੱਕ ਸੁਖਾਵਾਂ ਮਾਹੌਲ ਬਣਾ ਸਕੀਏ।